to the Rambler Podcast Network. My name is Jacob Elger.
My name is Nick Allen.
Here we do school news,
Current events,
and just a touch of nonsense.
Bitter batter, let's get right down at her, shall we?
All right. Well, I'd like to say welcome back to the Rambler Podcast Network, Episode 2 of the 2019-2020 series.
Yeah, actually, it's Episode 2, Season 2.
I guess that is correct, which actually leads me to my next point. We'd like to give a huge shout-out to our very own Xander Napont for starting the Rambler Podcast Network last year, along with Jocelyn Morgan. Both did a fantastic job covering school news, current events, kind of the same style that we do, and they kicked off a lot of great things in this program, letting us do what we're able to do now. So thank you, Xander and Jocelyn.
Yeah, and so actually recapping about our last episode, we decided to kind of loosen it up. We had a very loose structure, and we kind of just talked about random stuff for a good 30 minutes. This time, it's going to be a little different. Not to say that we won't be a little random, but we have more of a structured feel. And as you know, because you're listening to this right now, Nick and I are actually part of the Team BCVI. We're part of the RSN program. And we get a lot of questions, and because we're new, we don't actually know all the answers to them.
Don't know a whole lot, if I'm being quite honest. I don't know much about our whole deal that we do here, but I'm anxious to learn, and because of that, we thought it'd be a great idea to bring this big, dorky-looking, big-eared, big-nosed, big-everything guy, Randy Calcaterra. I'm not sure. You may have heard of him before.
No, I've never heard of him before. Please give me a...
So this is Randy Calcaterra. He's about 5'10".
Actually, it's 5'8", actually.
5'8". Okay,
5'8",
I was generous. I'm sorry.
5'7.5".
Yeah, not too
answer.
bad. But so we brought him on today. He claims to have some sort of knowledge in this field. We'll see if that's really true. And yeah, we're gonna pepper him with questions here.
But already you made fun of me, so I'm gonna have to bring this story up because I guess already it was. I'm wishing that we could revisit this because I think 8th grade year, both you guys in basketball, it was the Thanksgiving practice before we walked to BC Pizza because it was like a half day. So we practiced right after school, and then the idea was we walked to BC Pizza, which, by the way, another side story to this side story is that Max complained nonstop about having to walk.
Yes.
To walk from here to BC Pizza
Some things
was like
never change.
Right, exactly.
I remember proclaiming I was going to eat so much pizza, and I maybe ate about 2 slices, and the whole team gave me crap for it.
You've been a twig ever since.
Well, so anyway, my favorite story of the whole thing is we played dodgeball that day, and you made fun of me both, and I think, if I don't remember, I absolutely pegged you in the head. There was no tomorrow.
I can still feel it.
Yes, probably that was a definite highlight, and after you made fun of me, I think I'd like to revisit
that was fair.
But,
that was fair.
Yeah, okay.
Very fair to bring up.
Yeah.
So back on topic here, we're going to dive right into just some details about what you do, what your program does. So can you just give us a little introduction about what VI is? What is visual imaging?
Sure. So when I came here in 2003, there was a program, and actually under the state curriculum, everything in this world was called visual imaging. So that incorporated some video stuff, some graphics, some screen printing for shirts. It kind of was all encapsulated under a visual imaging umbrella, if you will. So we just sort of came up with the name. Actually, the kids in the group that year, the 2003, just came up with the name, because I always wanted to operate based on a team concept, that everyone's kind of doing their own element, just like a team does, or a marching band or whatever. Everyone's got their own, their own unique niche. So I wanted that team concept. So the idea was Team Boyne City Visual Imaging. So that's where the visual, Team BCVI thing and visual imaging kind of stemmed from. Since then, I don't know, 5-6 years later, obviously the field of digital media has grown so much and changes day by day that now, now graphics is a entirely separate entity, and web design is an entirely separate entity, and film is an entirely separate entity, and even live production is a separate entity, screen printing, all that stuff. So they broke things down. So now we're still visual imaging, even though we focus the graphics a lot, but the primary thing is living in the video world.
It's actually kind of interesting you bring up how much things have changed. I remember coming here as an elementary schooler and seeing the kiosk that was installed
Oh my
in the high
God.
school, and my brother,
Pong.
who graduated in 2005, I believe he was a member of your visual imaging program and helped do that. So when
and what he focused on was programming. So he was interested in programming. So he and Paul Solomon, or no, actually at that point, sorry, he and I believe it was Jacob Worsler, made a video game. And I used to have kids making video games, and that was another subset. We kind of got away from that. But
I mean, I was going to say this year, that would not even be on the table. We haven't thought about that at all. So to see where the program started and where it is now is very interesting.
Yeah, good point. Actually, your siblings have gone through some very interesting.
Each of the siblings.
Each of the siblings have been. Your sister was one of the biggest projects we've ever done with the
back to graduation.
Back to graduation. Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
So knowing now what you've just told us, I think it's pretty safe to assume that BCVI would stand for our Boyne City Visual Imaging
That's correct.
team.
That's correct, yeah.
What technically does this class fall under? Like, what is the name for this class? Because a lot of people classify it as RSN. They'll just cut. A lot of people will just say it's kind of the art class of computers.
Correct, yeah. Well, yeah, correct. So now, I mean, it used to be called visual imaging. Now it's called TV, formally from the state side of it, it's called TV and film broadcasting, because that's what curriculum, if you will, we follow. But underneath that, I mean, we're still doing visual imaging things, even though we're not doing the video game stuff. We're entirely responsible for designing the yearbook. We designed, for example, the drama playbill, which, by the way, we need to talk about that in a while. But that's one of the things.
Well, another thing we do too is if you just look on your screens right now, if you're on YouTube, we have people that have made this logo that you're looking at. We have Aiden Bream, who has animated it to get all these stars and smiley faces.
And who designed it? And who designed it first? We'll need to talk about that, Jacob.
A really smart guy,
a really
very handsome,
super talented guy decided, man, I'm gonna make some smiley faces. So our great artist Jacob Alger sketched some fantastic smiley faces and stars.
The swirly doos.
The swirly
doos. Because if you look in his Photoshop file, like the layers, I believe are named swirly doo. Are they 100%,
not? Yeah. Okay. No, that's the extent of my vernacular.
Yeah.
Those are.
Well, I couldn't have come up with a better name for that thing right there. It's definitely a swirly doo. If I've ever seen one, that's a swirly doo.
Oh, without a doubt. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean that kind of you touched on it a little bit. The different branches that RSN is responsible for producing, because that's what you do, right?
Well, hold on now. You said RSN, and that's a common mistake, right? So RSN is not responsible for producing any of that stuff. I would say visual imaging is responsible for it, but RSN is one of those entities that lies under that umbrella. Just like now with the help of Xander, started this new little focus here that's the RPN, right? Rambler Podcast Network, which is what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. So there's all these little things that lie underneath the visual imaging.
Okay, so it's a visual imaging class umbrella, but underneath that you have RSN, RPN, yearbook, that kind of stuff.
The send-off is a massive project that we undertake every year, and it certainly doesn't fall under an RSN thing, right? Yeah, it's just everyone kind of pitching in, but that in itself is a huge project that takes a ton of people and a ton of time.
Well, so now knowing that we have this umbrella of RSN, we have our visual imaging as a whole, what would you say specifically RSN is like producing specifically for? We know that there is the broadcasts for basketball and football, but is there anything else they're responsible for, and what goes into that?
Well, so yeah, certainly, obviously started off as the sports network, and the idea was when we started it was, sports here were in a little bit of a trough, if you will, the interest in even the student section participation and the success. So it was like, how do you use this tool to kind of like power that stuff up? So we started with the sports RSN kind of thing. And it's evolved a lot since then. Obviously, still the focus, I would say, of RSN, or Rambler Sports Network, is, doing football games, volleyball games, basketball games, and different events like that. But we have branched out and are trying to branch out into live broadcast other things. For example, People's Choice. Does that really fit under an RSN broadcast? It's not a sporting event.
Right. Yeah.
This year is going to be the first year we do graduation ceremony.
Oh, we're doing the graduation.
We're doing graduation, so we're going to live stream your graduation ceremony. So you guys can have that, with your send off, and you guys can see that whole thing,
That makes a lot of sense.
And you can go back and look at it. You
Right.
can show
But
people.
is that necessarily a sporting event?
Right. That's not. I mean, you can't say it's a sporting event.
You can't say it's,
But
but at
is
the
it-
same point, ESPN is broadcasting a spelling bee.
Right.
That's not
True.
Right.
ESPN is doing the ESPYs. You know, I mean, so I think it falls under the RSN thing because it's the workflow in terms of how we produce that is very similar than what you would do to a sporting event, but it's certainly not necessarily a sport. But whatever, it's the content that you're producing, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
Well, yeah. I mean, RSN is certainly the biggest part. I think that when people think of our visual imaging class here in Boyne City, RSN is, of course, the first thing that comes to mind, the Rambler Sports Network. So can you take us through like the steps or I guess the processes of creating an RSN broadcast and, how difficult that may or may not be, stuff like that?
Sure, absolutely. And that's one thing that your siblings never experienced at all because, for example, in the case of Allison, when we were in back to graduation mode, I mean, the entire focus of that entire year, and again, there was no bigger project we've ever done than that.
Yeah.
But the entire focus that entire year had to be, we were
Making
producing
that
that
movie.
movie. We were producing that movie for the entire year.
And it was a very great movie. It's really fun to watch, but to think that is the only thing that you guys were, that's where all your time was going, I don't know.
Actually, that was where all our time. I mean, we
Right,
started. I had to start that, in end of September, and that took us all the way till the night before to produce. And side note on this, by the way, have you guys driven by the clock tower in the last month?
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing we did that movie when we did
kidding,
because
yeah.
now all of a sudden the clock tower is like,
gone.
it's just I don't know what it was.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's puny. However, when we were up there, I learned this. When it was windy, I mean, if you push that thing, I mean, you could see that thing sway like
Oh, that's
5
sketchy.
to 10
I
feet.
wouldn't
So
like
I
that.
could understand why they did movie. So anyway, back to your question. So now in the live production mode, and you guys have been through this a lot in the fall. It's a totally different entity than producing like a feature film like that. You're producing an event live. It's a completely different workflow. It's a completely different arm. There's a completely different set of skills having to do that. And a lot of it is setting up and testing and making sure all the stuff is ready to roll and then practicing and rehearsing. So when you're actually in a game or in a People's Choice, everyone knows their roles and it goes off as smooth as can be. Now, there's always issues. Alger knows plenty about that. You didn't know much because, you did one volleyball game.
I did one volleyball game.
And by the way, hilarious. You were on live text that day and you really
yeah.
It was good stuff. It was
Really
good stuff.
Really embellished.
No,
the,
that is one
Libero.
thing. Yeah, about producing live. You get an opportunity to have fun with the material that you're producing at the same time as everyone else, and I think that's pretty unique.
Correct. Yeah.
Because like you were saying, I had a ton of fun doing those live texts, and it wasn't like I was sitting there for a day and a half thinking of these funny things or
Right.
these
It's
fing to
read
play
and
with.
react. Yeah,
It absolutely is. Yeah,
and you were fantastic at that. And while you were doing that, you were on the floor.
Yeah, I was on the floor
dorking around with
trying to figure out some volleyball.
some libero terms, which so between Nick's improv on the live text and then Jacob's, and that's another thing we need to talk about is I think the power of how cool of what you added to the broadcast. We never seen Nick Allen's face. We never heard his voice. We never. There's so many people behind the
all the
scenes.
people.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it's
12,
behind
13,
the curtain,
14 people. The only one that's seen and heard was Jacob Alger and the
Just
Bryants.
the pretty faces.
The pretty faces.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey, Nick
one-
said it himself.
hey, you guys hit me at the beginning, so I can hit back a little bit. But anyway, I mean, so there's Nick, totally behind the scenes, totally adding all this humor and fun to the thing, but we never hear his voice. We never see him. People don't get that, but in the end product, man, do you get that?
It makes a nice product.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It
yeah,
just makes that one level. It separates a broadcast from an interesting broadcast.
So hopefully that you guys have picked up on this. My whole thing is anyone can produce this stuff. If you're producing for entertainment, whether it's People's Choice or a volleyball game, football game, whatever it is, if you're producing it for entertainment and people can be entertained out of it, not only to watch the volleyball, to watch now it's entertainment. You're all your little stuff that you're putting in and your little twists that you're putting in on with the wireless or the sideline reporting, all of a sudden becomes entertainment. And you're watching this stuff for entertainment. You made the point right before we came on air here about how cool that is to watch that kind of stuff at home, something that you did, and now your dad's got it on the big screen TV, and how cool this is, and now it's entertaining. It's not just
Absolutely.
It's definitely one of those out of body experiences when you create something. You spend so long looking at this screen. You're frustrated. You're trying to figure out why this isn't working, and then you produce it, and you see someone consuming what you have put time and effort into, and enjoying it. They're enjoying what you've produced, and it's a good feeling to understand that.
So that is, I think that right there is the number one thing that I would say I would hope you guys get out of this.
Absolutely.
Is everyone in here going to be making their living doing this stuff? No, but now you understand what goes into a process like this and all the stuff that you guys do consume.
And it helps you appreciate. I know when I started understanding what it goes into our high school football broadcasts on RSN, which are great. They're great, but I mean the magnitude of that compared to the magnitude of
college football or
watching
Monday Night
Michigan
Football or
play
something.
Ohio State
Oh
or
my
something
gosh.
like that. Like
Yep.
I could not believe once I started to understand how much work goes into it. I could not believe the quality of production that we see on TV every single day.
And it's so flawless. Like you don't even
Exactly.
think about it. Like they're
So
doing so
flawless.
well that you never stop to think.
Which is the other point, and I think you guys have already reached this. And let's use that volleyball broadcast. I think one of the other goals that I would have is if people are watching our product, or even this podcast, or the Send Off, or whatever, and not thinking about the technicals that went into it, just getting the entertainment out of it, you guys have won.
Yeah.
And that's the part.
Yeah,
because
you don't want them to notice.
you don't want them to notice.
Yeah.
And until you go through this, you don't notice that when you're watching the college football thing, but now you kind of have a respect for that. So yeah, it's a great point.
Kind of going back on the RSN, in a way, I feel like RSN gets to incorporate a lot of different ideas more than just the broadcast that you're seeing going on in that different areas. Like we have all these calling cards, like I don't know the best way to put it. We have all these scores boards, score tags, I guess, on the bottom, and then you have all these Twitter feeds going on to there. There's someone that makes every one of those, and there's someone that puts it on there. They're the one that type out the names, that do the art onto it.
Yeah, that's something too. When I, going into VI, does everybody make? So everything that you see as a consumer on the screen, is that all made in VI, or are there preset?
I would say 100% is student-generated stuff. Now, the difference and the cool thing and the other thing that people do not realize, too, is there's no way we could sustain what we do having a group come in September and start from scratch and regenerate all these graphics, these scoreboards, replay transitions, all this kind of stuff, and then go to a football game 2 weeks into the school year.
Right.
So we are reusing content that has been already created.
Yeah,
and hopefully you guys are creating content that future groups
will be able to
will
make.
use, down the line, 3-4 years down the line. So that's the goal, is like you're going to keep handing things off and keep the ball rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we kind of briefly touched about it, like what you hope people get out of this class, and we talked about the whole idea of seeing what you've produced consumed, and the whole idea of you win when someone doesn't sit there and think, wow, I can see how they're doing this and all that stuff. You win when they're just immersed into the moment.
Right.
Is there any other key factors like like the willpower to work through things, like problem solving? Is there a specific thing you're looking for that you want to see in someone when they come into this class?
Well, I think this is an end outcome for sure, but the other thing, and whether or not, again, you work in this field or something, what you're doing in the volleyball broadcast or football, and again, Nick, you were on the field, but the amount of troubleshooting you have to do and thinking on your feet, both to be creative as well as to solve problems and to work as a team. Again, this is 12 in the RSN thing, it's 12, 13, 14 people that are working in concert. How many people you see or hear on the screen is 2, maybe. You don't see those 12 or 14, but there is an entire back world, if you will, an underground world that we live in where we're all on headsets and we're cracking jokes about you on the headsets and working, but we're also working through problems, and it's, a stressful environment, and that skill for your guys' life doesn't matter what you do in your future. That's, you're going to have to work in teams. You're going to have to think on your feet and solve problems under pressure. And, and by the way, there's a lot of technology involved too. And is technology a part of,
Well, every
anyone's
day it's
world?
more prevalent.
Well,
Exactly.
I mean,
So,
the way that we're doing this this podcast right now, I'm looking at more technology than I ever had in the first
Oh my gosh,
8
yes.
or 16 years of my life. So it's pretty incredible seeing all of this stuff at work and starting to begin to understand how to use it is pretty incredible.
Yep.
So I'd like to take us to our next point here. I'm kind of curious about how like we already talked about, there's so many things that this visual imaging program has done in the past and can do. Who decides what you do in each year? I mean, are you driving it?
Well, I think what I generally try to tell the groups is like, I want you being the kids in the group, right? I want you to figure out where the ship's going to go, and then I help steer the ship to get that way. Now, of course, we plant the little seeds in there. This year, a big thing is the Ramblertron, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I knew, and I've been working on this for 8-9 years to put that in place. But here's another tool that we have at our disposal to be creative and to entertain people.
Yeah.
But how exactly we use it, leave that up to you guys.
Totally student.
Try to give, and as you know, yesterday we went through a voting process where you both did a series of pitches. Both of you guys presented ideas for what could be the next, a couple of the next This Is RSN commercials.
And regardless what it is, they're going to be really, really cool.
Yeah,
Like, it's
and
gonna
then
turn really well.
the whole group votes on them, and so we try to make it the direction that you guys want it to go within the framework of, hey, now we've got, for example, this Ramblertron that we can play with. I mean, there's this toy that however, I say toy. I mean, this is a very serious, expensive thing that has a lot of power. I mean, again, use the U of M model. All the U of M's and Central Michigans and Michigan States, they have this kind of thing at their disposal to use in their. No high school is going to have something quite like it in their gym for sure. And now we get to play with it, and we've got some great ideas and things coming down the pipe with that.
So it kind of sounds like, as much as the students want to put into it, you're more than willing to help them get there and do what they want to do.
Well, I don't want to see, and you guys heard me say this at the beginning, I don't want to, you'll never hear me say don't go too far.
Yeah.
Fly, go, see where it goes. The same thing with this podcast. I mean, you guys wanted to go open-ended, your first one, have at it. I mean, that's fantastic. It's the power of creative decisions and just creating something that people can consume. So.
Yeah, and I like to think that we make the analogy behind curtains and all that kind of stuff, the stuff you don't see. I like to make the analogy of like Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind the curtain at the end of that, and that's a major reason.
Are you saying I look like him? Is that what?
Well, I mean, I wasn't going for that.
Oh,
We already
okay.
went to your looks. We wouldn't make fun of you twice.
Okay.
That's just mean.
Yeah, okay, good.
And
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that.
No,
I'm
not twice.
assuming this is probably why we don't do movies as much anymore, and commercials we are talking about doing some, but is the reason we don't do the movies because of that? Like, you don't see as many people on screen as you hope to see.
Well, it was a couple things, to be honest. There was one. First of all, the one that your sister was in, Nick, there's no bigger. There was absolutely nowhere to go after that because it was such a massive, huge undertaking that involved the town and there was no. It was time to switch gears.
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of happened out of that was a very big surprise to me, was that this program, when we were in the height of moviedom, if you will, became more about people wanting to be involved, and not just students, the teachers, community members. People wanted to be involved because they wanted to be on the screen and be the star or the performer, versus what it's really about, and whether it's live production or movie, the behind the scenes producing of.
Yeah.
And and then we come into a time where, again, the sports were in a little dip. It's like, okay, how do we use the power? And it's time to switch gears and that kind of thing. So it was a combined reason for kind of a transition away from that. The idea that there was people that it became more focused on performance than the producing was a shock to me. Because that's not what it's about. I mean, obviously, Jacob, you know more than anyone else, we have a phenomenal drama program that does incredible things that is certainly all about the performance side of things, and that's where that focus should stay. This is a different scope.
Yeah.
So it was a variety of reasons for that.
Makes complete sense.
Yep.
So I have probably one of the most important questions we've asked so far.
Okay.
What kind of tests, or do we have tests in our TV?
Yeah, I mean,
film
how do
class?
you grade the students in VI?
Yeah,
Go
well,
then.
your grade based on the first comments of making fun of me a little bit probably dipped
a little dip.
and then it came back when you kind of said like, how impressive that thing, and then it went down again, and so I don't know, it's been wavering in the last 20 minutes, Nick.
Calc, you look taller all of a sudden. I gotta say, you must
That
have
might not
grown
be
nice.
a compliment, but yes.
Been working out lately?
Yeah,
I'm just
yes,
saying.
exactly. I would say this is the best answer I can get. There's no better, more realistic test than when you're sitting in the auditorium during your send-off, knowing what reaction you're generating or dictating out of everyone else that's sitting there.
Yeah.
Or you're sitting in the trailer here producing a volleyball game, and you have someone that's a family member of a player watching from Kentucky tweeting in saying how much they're enjoying seeing there, or your girlfriend's sister in, what was it, Washington?
Yeah, in D.C.
Washington, D.C. Watching her, that is a phenomenal test. Again, she's not engaged with how are they doing that. Nope, that camera is moving too fast. She's engaged with the content, and that's one heck of a good test.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much sums up visual imaging. We want to produce good content. It's entertainment, but at the same time, it's a learning experience behind it for everyone who's involved, and
it's all about producing something that
It's
people
all
can
about
consume
producing.
and enjoy.
exactly.
Like,
And again, we don't have time. We're running short on time, but we haven't even talked about the amount of work that goes into the yearbook or the graduation program
Exactly.
or all these other productions that are very valuable.
Wow.
The yearbook in itself is totally different because, and I try to go through this, a lot. Unlike a volleyball game or a football game, who's being consumed in the moment exactly as it's happening, whether it be Washington, D.C. or Hawaii or Iraq. The yearbook is something that you probably aren't going to consume and really enjoy till you guys are 5, 10, 15 years out of high school.
Right.
And it's a totally different kind of feel, but that doesn't make it any less important, and it's certainly not any less work. I mean, there's a ton of work in that. And that's a whole other arm that, deserves a lot of attention, and because it is a very valuable thing, and it's very important.
Yeah, and I know we are running out of time, but I just want to make sure, you did point it out, that we give some credit to the yearbook people, because they put countless hours and they're always working on fixing that one little thing.
Correct, yep.
And they're staring at that screen and they have to get the fine details going down, and they create an excellent final product that we
Correct.
can all consume for years to come. And it is one of those most powerful things that you can make a yearbook that really
you
lasting
guys
memory.
you guys as 18-year-old high schoolers, 15, whatever, probably aren't going to really value that until you're my age.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You look back on that and you see, 100%.
So, like you guys hinted at, we are just about out of time, but Calc, I would like to say thank you very much for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it was a great time to talk about what we do here, and I'm definitely understanding a bit more what this umbrella of our visual imaging actually does.
Well, guys, I thank you for having this idea to do this, and I hear we have some interesting. We're going to try 2. You guys are going to try. And by the way, I thank you also. I thank Xander for coming up with this concept in the beginning.
100%.
And then I thank you guys for taking the ball and going your own way with it. It's fantastic.
Bunch of
And now
thankful people.
now next week, apparently we're going to try 2. You guys are going to
We're gonna
try
try
2.
2.
So
We're gonna
why
try
don't you
2.
guys tell us what, or tell the audience what to expect?
Well, we
coming up.
want you to stay tuned. We have a very special Panama Latin American episode coming up, as
Okay.
well as a bit more traditional American Christmas episode. That
So
we're
Monday, you
very
should be-
much looking forward
Monday,
to.
you should be looking for a Spanish podcast, and Friday, you can
Wait. The whole thing's going to be in Spanish?
Well, we'll just wait and see.
We'll see.
Oh,
tune in
did I
to
just
find out.
did I just open a little can there?
But we will have guests for both episodes.
Yes.
So you
Wonderful,
get to hear an
wonderful.
interesting
So
voice
stay
along
tuned.
with us.
Look forward to those, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
All right, have a good one.